Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening: a late sell-off on Dalal-Street. The Nifty loses more than 200 points from the high point of the day to end flat. Mid-caps and bank stocks gave up gains. IT stocks bucked the trend. Crude oil prices rally after the United States steps up the pressure on Russia, imposes sanctions on two of Russia's largest oil companies. This comes a day after President Trump shelved the proposed summit with President Putin. Russia ramps up attacks on Ukraine and conducts nuclear drills. U.S. sanctions on Russia's Rosneft comes as a setback for its subsidiary Nayara, which runs the second largest refinery in India. Trump says India's Russian oil imports will be down to nothing by the end of the year. A Reliance Industries spokesperson tells Reuters the conglomerate is recalibrating its Russian oil imports to align with government guidelines. Prime Minister Modi will not be travelling to Malaysia for the ASEAN summit, quashing speculation of a meeting with President Trump on the sidelines. Foreign Minister Jaishankar to represent India, and Prime Minister Modi will also attend the summit virtually. Hindustan Unilever meets estimates in Q2. A one-time tax exceptional reversal boosts the bottom line. In her first press conference as CEO, Priya Nair says the company will be obsessed with volume-led growth as the long-term strategy. A fresh twist in the boardroom battle at the Tata Trust. Sources say Mehli Mistry provided conditional approval to Venu Srinivasan's reappointment to the board. Mistry will withdraw support if all future reappointments are not unanimous, taking some trustees by surprise. Mistry's term as a trustee expires in 5 days. The government amends the IT rules to limit the powers to take down online content to fewer officials. Only senior bureaucrats or police officers can order the removal of content. The move follows a legal battle with Elon Musk's social media platform X on the contentious policy. Tesla's profits declined for the fourth quarter despite record sales as tariffs and research costs take a toll. IBM boosts growth outlook after reporting orders worth nearly $10 billion for its AI business. It's a sparkling Diwali for retailers. The Confederation of All India Traders claims record-breaking sales at over 6 lakh crore rupees. Consumer durables and auto sector sees record growth as well. Quick commerce apps emerge as the biggest growth drivers. After weeks of speculation, the opposition bloc formally declares RJD leader Tejashwi Yadav as the CM face for the upcoming Bihar Assembly elections. Vikashsheel Insan Party chief Mukesh Sahni named as the deputy chief minister's face. Well, let's start with the day's market action. The Sensex and the Nifty started very strong, but then erased all of those gains after a late sell-off. In fact, the Nifty fell more than 200 points, coming off its intraday high, finally closed just about in positive territory. So flat close there, but as I pointed out, a big fall intraday. The Sensex, similar story. The Nifty mid-cap closing in the red and the Bank Nifty up by about 70 points. Surabhi joins us now to wrap up the day's market action. Surabhi started very strong but gave up the gains towards the close.
Well, the all-time high had to wait. Despite getting a very solid indication from the GIFT Nifty in the morning, which was indicating that we'll start 400 points higher, the day turned out to be fairly different. Well, we never got such a big gap up, but we did have a very decent opening with about a 200-point gain. But then the momentum couldn't continue. In fact, the Nifty hit an intraday high of 26,104. But then in the second half, things kind of started fizzling out. The momentum was not there because anyway, we started with global cues that were not very, very supportive. US markets were under pressure. A lot of big tech earnings are in focus over there, and some of those stocks were down in after-hours trading. And then, of course, this continued uncertainty around the trade deal, India-US. We don't have too many specifics as to when, a deal will finally be signed. So the market continued to be in wait-and-watch mode. Let's talk about IT, because that was the big story of the day and a big, big winner, because it seems that there's some more clarity. At least student visas will not be clubbed with that big one-time fee. And some of that really helped the IT sector. Infosys in particular, where promoters are not participating in the buyback, that stock was the key winner on the Nifty. It actually took the rest of the pack up along with it. So if you talk about the gainers and Infosys, HCL Tech, TCS, Tech Mahindra, all these stocks rallying between 1 to 4%. The other leg of the market was also fairly all right. I'm talking about banking and financial services. So if you look at gainers, Shriram Finance, Axis Bank and Kotak Mahindra Bank. These were some of the names that were in focus on the upside. Now let's talk about the other big global story, US's additional sanctions on Russian entities like Rosneft. This did lead to some profit taking in the oil and gas refiners, marketing and refining companies. So IOC, HP, HPCL, BPCL, by the time we were ending, these stocks were down about 2 to 3%. Let's talk about the other Nifty gainers then. The names included the likes of ITC and L&T. But now when I come to the loser side of the screen, it's a pretty long list here as well. Eternal losing about 3%. Eicher Motors seeing some profit taking. Interglobe Aviation and big boys like ICICI Bank and Reliance as well, not quite batting for the bulls today. All of these stocks are coming to profit taking. The mid-cap market was lacking momentum. That was the other problem with the day. There was overall profit taking going on. The index ended flat. The advance decline ratio was 1:1.
Surabhi, many thanks for joining us. That's the market action for you. And gold prices rising today after 2 sessions of sharp declines. This as investors were back for some safe haven buying. While investors are awaiting key U.S. inflation data, fresh U.S. and European sanctions on Russia did help the metal regain some of its lost sheen. The top story that we're tracking this evening, the U.S. government has imposed fresh sanctions that target Russia's 2 oil companies. This has been done in an effort to pressurize Moscow to negotiate a peace deal with Ukraine. Now, one of the 2 companies includes Rosneft, which owns 49.13% stake in India-based Nayara Energy. Meanwhile, the European Union has also approved the 19th package of sanctions on Russia, and this will also include a ban on the imports of Russian liquefied natural gas. This move comes after President Trump shelved a proposed summit with President Putin, and the White House hardened its stance against the Kremlin. Now, things have been escalating on the battlefield as well, with Russia launching a barrage of drone attacks and conducting nuclear drills. After a call with Prime Minister Modi on Diwali, President Trump had also reiterated that India will not be buying more oil from Russia. In fact, he went a step further and said India's oil imports from Russia will be, and I quote, almost nothing by the end of this year. Take a look.
India, as you know, has told me they are stop. You know, it's a process. You can't just stop it. But by the end of the year, they'll be down to almost nothing. That's a big thing. That was almost 40% of the oil. India, they've been great. Spoke to Prime Minister Modi yesterday. They've been absolutely great.
19th package is very important, and of European leaders, of EU. But American sanctions are also very important. And this is a good signal to other countries in the world to join the sanctions. You know that not only energy, we need shadow fleet, etc., and continue until Putin will stop this war.
Well, that's the latest there as far as Russia and Ukraine is concerned, and the sanctions being imposed by both the US and the EU on Russian crude. Now, crude oil prices jumping after US sanctions came into effect. In fact, hitting back to a 5-month this week, prices surged as the U.S. also saw a drop in U.S. crude inventories that eased oversupply concerns. And Trump's pressure on India, the country's top oil refiner Reliance Industries, is signaling a potential reduction to its Russian oil imports. Company spokesperson told Reuters, and I quote, recalibration of Russian oil imports is ongoing and Reliance will be fully aligned to the government of India's guidelines on the extent of recalibration, end of quote. Sonal standing by now with the details of the fresh U.S. sanctions and the impact that they will have on global oil supply and specifically on India. Sonal.
Well, yes, U.S. has gone ahead and sanctioned 2 big Russian oil producers. One of them, of course, is Rosneft. The other one is Lukoil, which is done to pressure Moscow to negotiate a peace deal with Ukraine. Now, remember, UK had done it last week, and before that, last year itself in July, European Union had issued a communique where they had put out sanctions on Russian oil and gas companies, the major ones there, and EU restrictions on operations of Rosneft's 20 million tons per annum refinery in India as well. Now, why is Rosneft so important for India? Now, do remember, Rosneft is a Russian state-owned oil corporation which owns 49.13% stake in a private company in India, which is Nayara Energy. And Nayara Energy operates the 2nd largest private refinery in the country as well. As I said earlier, it has a capacity of 20 million tons per annum. Now, some numbers for Nayara Energy. As of September 2025, it relied entirely on Russian supplies. This is because the sanctions earlier did not give it the way forward in terms of importing crude oil from other producers, the likes of Iraq and other non-Russian sources as well. Crude oil imports fell 22% on a YOY basis for Nayara Energy to 330 barrels per day in September 2025. This is about imports. In fact, the exports also dropped massively to around 89,000 barrels per day, which compares with around 210,000 barrels per day on a YOY basis. The exports majorly were to the countries like Middle East, Turkey, Brazil, etc. But because of these sanctions that came through last year, all these exports also saw a big fall on a YOY basis. Now remember, in their earlier statement as well, Nayara Energy indicated that they are seeking assistance from government to navigate challenges posed by these sanctions. In fact, we did speak to some experts in the morning on what the possible impact of these sanctions could be on crude oil prices, on refining margins and cracks overall.
Sonal, many thanks for joining us. Now, the trade negotiations between India and the US could take longer to reach a landing zone. The widely speculated meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi will not happen on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Malaysia next week. The US sanctions on Russian oil companies could also complicate matters. Parikshit is here with the details. Parikshit, where does this leave the trade negotiations?
Well, there is going to be no meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump at ASEAN summit, as was being speculated in the media. Prime Minister Modi will participate virtually in the ASEAN summit. This means that India-US trade talks, which have been in final stages, could take longer. Both sides are yet to reach a consensus and a landing zone. However, India and United States officials are still hopeful of reaching a deal by November and December. In fact, industry sources hope that the average tariff rate would be in the range of 10 to 15%. No official confirmation on that. In yet another pressure move, US has sanctioned Russia's largest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil. Sanctions aimed at pressurizing Russia's oil economy, and companies transacting with these sanctioned entities will face action as well. Now, analysts say these US sanctions will definitely have some disruptions and impact on Indian oil companies, but the supply chain is likely to stabilize again, as has been seen in the past. Most Indian companies largely source Russian crude through third-party tenders, and therefore immediate operational impact would be limited. Now, this is the latest reaction and analysis by Kepler on US sanctions. In order to address US concerns, India has increased oil imports from United States by 60% year on year, and this is part of our diversification efforts. But completely cutting off Russian oil imports has been difficult, according to analysts. Indian import of Russian crude was 1.8 million barrels per day in October, and this is 34% of total imports and comes with compelling discounts. India's US crude imports in 2025 have increased to 295,000 barrels per day compared to 199,000 barrels per day in 2024. India has limited upside, according to analysts, to take US crude to around 400,000 to 500,000 barrels per day, as US grades face higher outright and transportation costs. There are also compatibility challenges with Indian refining systems. Having said that, let's see what action India takes in light of the latest US sanctions.
Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. Well, that is the latest as far as the issue of Russian crude and sanctions being imposed by the US. But Parikshit, hang on. We'll come back to you in just a bit for the other big story that you're tracking. But let's talk about the earnings of the day. Hindustan Unilever's second quarter performance met expectations, profits ahead of estimates, thanks to a one-time tax gain, revenues largely in line and margins ahead of estimates. Speaking at her first press conference as CEO, Priya Nair said HUL will be obsessed with volume-led growth as its long-term strategy. Take a look.
We will be obsessed with volume-led revenue growth. This will be our focus, our obsession. There are 4 pillars we will focus on as a strategy in the future. The first is that we will segment radically our consumer segments in India. There are distinct consumer cohorts emerging in India. We have a unique opportunity to serve all these emerging segments in India. We will future fit our marketing and sales frontline machinery. Our marketing will become much more social first demand generation, and we will invest in ensuring that we are investing behind quick commerce and e-commerce. We will radically transform our core brands, making them more modern, youthful, contemporary.
Well, that's Priya Nair on her strategy for HUL. Shares of Infosys gaining nearly 4% after the tech giant said its promoters will not participate in its 18,000 crore rupee buyback. This, as the decision increases acceptance ratio for shareholders. Promoters not tendering shares generally signals confidence in the company's long-term growth. The buyback exercise will cover around 2.4% of equity at 1,800 rupees a share. Tata Motors' own Jaguar Land Rover is likely to suffer a loss of £550 million due to the cyber attack that halted production in September. This, according to Cyber Monitoring Centre, an independent agency that tracks the impact of cyber hits on UK-based firms. Now, the agency has estimated that the cyber attack will also cost the UK economy an estimated £1.9 billion. JLR has declined to respond to CNBC TV 18's query on the matter, so we don't have any further updates on when we are going to see a resumption of full-scale operations. AI startup Unifor has secured $260 million in funding from tech giants I.N.D.I.A and AMD, and this takes the startup's total funding to $870 million. The Series F funding round maintains the company's $2.5 billion valuation. Unifor has said the capital will be invested in its flagship AI and data platform business AI Cloud. A fresh twist in the boardroom battle at Tata Trust. Sources say Mehli Mistry provided conditional approval to Venu Srinivasan's reappointment to the board. Mistry will withdraw support if all future reappointments are not unanimous, taking some trustees by surprise. Mistry's term as trustee expires in the next 5 days. Parikshit is back with us for the latest. Parikshit, so conditional approval coming in there for Mehli Mistry. What does that mean?
Well, yes, this move by Mehli Mistry, the director of the Meher Palanji Group, and also a trustee on board both the Sir Dorabji Tata Trust and the Ratan Tata Trust, took everyone by surprise. This happened just before Venu Srinivasan's reappointment, and he, in a mail to all the trustees, said that he would support Venu Srinivasan only if all trustees agree that all future reappointments of trustees will happen unanimously, automatically, and it will be for life. Now, this is being seen by some as somewhat setting a condition that would help him secure his reappointment in the coming days. And it also comes just ahead of his term expiring as trustee on 28th of October. Now, this has also led to speculation on whether there is any such clause within Tata Trust where there can be conditional support and retrospective withdrawal in future. Some say there is no such clause in the rules and regulations or in the rule book of the Tata Group for that matter. Let's see what happens in the next few days. The Tata Trusts are set to soon move a circular and send it for approval of all trustees to reappointment of Mehli Mistry. Let's see what happens. But the members of the Sir Dorabji Tata Trust include Noel Tata, Venu Srinivasan, Vijay Singh, Pramit Javeri, Mehli Mistry, Darius Kambata. These are the people who will play a deciding factor. And any trustee who has to be reappointment has to be done unanimously. Even if there is one vote against, it won't go forward.
All right, Parikshit, will be tracking that closely. Many thanks for joining us. We'll end to a break, but when we return, it's been a sparkling Diwali for retailers. The Confederation of All India Traders claims record-breaking sales at over 6 lakh crore rupees. That and more when we return. Well, the government has amended the IT rules to allow only senior bureaucrats or police officers to issue takedown orders for online content. The move follows a legal battle with Elon Musk's social media platform X on this contentious policy issue. Ashmit is standing by now to take us through the details. Ashmit, what amendments is the government moving, and what is the likely impact going to be? I mean, a lot of this was something that Elon Musk's legal team was arguing in the Karnataka High Court.
Well, the government bringing in amended IT rules which take effect from the 1st of November. And under these amended IT rules, the government has brought in safeguards with respect to takedown orders. Bear in mind that under the amended IT rules, only officers of the rank of Joint Secretary or higher will now be authorized to issue takedown orders. In case of police, the rank prescribed is DIG. Only officers of the rank of DIG and higher will be authorized to pass these takedown orders. The concern that was felt within the government is that there was many cases where even police officers of the rank of ASI had been issuing takedown orders to large social media companies, and that's the reason why this need was felt for issuance of these additional safeguards. The second safeguard that has been brought in is that these takedown orders will have to be issued necessarily through a well-reasoned order. They have to have a statutory legal backing, and importantly, they must clearly clarify as to what the unlawful content was. That's the second safeguard. The third is that there will be a monthly review of all the takedown orders that are issued by a government department or by the police, and that this will be looked at. There will be some amount of oversight there. Now, while the government is quick to point out that this has absolutely nothing to do with the challenge that had been issued by Elon Musk-backed X to government's takedown orders, nonetheless, many of these safeguards, many of these questions were the questions that were raised by X before the Karnataka High Court. In fact, at one point, X's counsels had argued before Karnataka High Court that any Tom, Dick and Harry officer is now issuing these takedown orders, and this lack of safeguards is is something that had been flagged. The government, again, just to confirm, is clarifying that there is no correlation to the X suit that had been filed before the Karnataka High Court. But nonetheless, additional safeguards now being brought in, and this is for takedown orders under Section 79 of the IT Act.
All right. Many thanks, Ashmit, for joining us. It's been a sparkling Diwali for Indian retailers. The auto sector reportedly has had its best festive run yet. The Confederation of All India Traders claimed record-breaking sales at over 6 lakh crore rupees. Shilpa is here with the festive report card. Shilpa.
Well, data and commentary from companies and industry bodies are suggesting that it's been a record-breaking festive season for India. Across the board, from Diwali lights to new car keys, consumer spending has come back strong this year. And this has been majorly thanks to GST cuts and higher discretionary spending. First, let's look at how retail did. Now, early indicators from the Retailers Association shows apparel saw a good movement, with value apparel growing over 10% and occasion wear also growing up to 5%. And this is for a sector that has seen muted growth for the past couple of seasons. It also said that the beauty and personal care segments also saw good growth, even electronics, and we'll come back to that in a little more detail. Now, DLF Retail also noted that the overall footfall was up 12% year on year, and for them also, electronics, jewelry and retail all performed very well. Consumer durables, that's the sector that really led the charge this time thanks to GST cuts. Now, Vijay Sales has said that it saw growth of over 20% year on year this time, which is the double of the 10% that it saw last year. TV sales benefited significantly from GST cuts, while ACs are also picking up. Now, there was also particularly high growth, Vijay Sales said, that in mobile phones and laptops and kitchen appliances as well. Now, the next was auto sector, which also seems to have had its best festive run yet. Tata Motors passenger vehicles had a record delivery of over 1 lakh cars during Navratri to Diwali period, and that's a 33% increase over the same period last year. And meanwhile, Maruti Suzuki reported, 4.5 lakh units, of which 1 lakh unit itself was small cars, and it saw retail sales hitting 3.25 lakh units in this period. Now, the Confederation of All India Traders, the CAIT, has also claimed that Diwali sales touched 6 lakh crores, making it the highest ever festive season, and this figure included 5.4 lakh crores in goods and about 65,000 crores in services, and this, they said, is based on a survey of 60 major distribution centers. Now, the festive season was not just offline, right? The cheer extended to online sales as well, with e-commerce sector seeing a 24% growth in order volumes and a 23% increase in gross merchandise value. And the massive driver here this time was quick commerce apps, which saw a 120% year-on-year jump in order volumes. And all in all, right, so after several quarters of muted demand, this festive season seems to have truly lifted the consumer sentiment.
Well, that's what the numbers seem to suggest. Shilpa, many thanks for joining us. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue right here on CNBC TV 18. Stay tuned. We're back in a moment with a lot more.